Hey y'all, and welcome back to the character creation course. I'm Sir Pinkbeard, and in today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to create the inside of the mouth and the teeth. Now, if you haven't retopped your head yet throughout this series, you can click on the card right now, and it'll take you back to the retopping the head video, at which point, once you've got a retopped or modeled head, you can come back here. So, let's get started. Go ahead and hide everything except what we're going to be working on, which is everything except the head area. And then what we want to do is come up to the top here between the 3D viewport and the outliner panel. We can see there's this little gap and our cursor changes to the crosshairs. So go ahead and click on that and then drag over and we'll be able to split the screen. And this is going to be important because it's going to allow us to see what we're doing on the right hand side and what we're doing from the front. Now, before we model the inside of the mouth, we want to mark out where the tops and bottom of the inside of our mouth are going to be. So change the right-hand view over to wireframe and then grab the annotation brush. Now, you want to make sure that the placement here is on the 3D cursor or the view, but not on the surface, because the surface is going to conform to the actual mesh, and that's not what we want. Now, if you stick your tongue between your teeth and your bottom lip, you'll feel that the bottom of your mouth is essentially going to go underneath the gums and then all the way to the chin. So we're just going to kind of mark out like, hey, that's where that's going to go. And then we're going to take it up slightly with the jawline and then back down into the throat. We might not come this far, but we want to come far enough so that if you were to look directly into the throat, you really wouldn't see what was going on. All right, and then for the top is going to kind of come all the way up to the bottom of the nose area. You can kind of do that and then pull this also down into the throat. Again, it doesn't have to go all the way down past the Adam's apple or whatever, just far enough that if you were to stick a camera in the center of the guy's mouth that you wouldn't see through and realize that he's hollow on the inside. All right, now that we've marked that out, let's actually start modeling it. Select the head and go into edit mode on it, and then we want to select the inside edge loop for the mouth. Now, you could hit Alt and then select it. So what could end up happening if you hit Alt and then select is it selects the entire edge loop all the way from the front of the, all the way around, which is not what we want at all. So just make sure that when you've got it selected, you've just got these vertices selected right in here. Okay, and with those selected, what we want to do, continue looking at this from the front. We'll come over to the right hand side here and extrude, and then we want to extrude along the y-axis. Now, we don't want to take this too far because this is just going to serve as the top inside of the lip, but we do want to go ahead and pull it back just a bit. Now, at this point, what I want to do is let's move this over and jump into X-ray here, so I can see the vertices that I'm working on. And then I guess we'll come in and select these in the back. So we have these pulled out, they're good to go. Let's go ahead and scale them up on the Z-axis a little bit, and then move these vertices down. And you can move the entire vertice on its own. All right, so we can't really get to it from the right-hand side. So for now, we'll just pull these down on their own. And if it's going to make it easier, we can go ahead and select these faces and then just hide them. So that way we can work on the mouth bag without having to worry about it too much. So there we go. That's actually going to be a lot better. So now we can come in and pull these vertices down. Okay, and with that done, you're basically going to repeat that step. So we can come over here and extrude on the y-axis, scale it up on the z. There we go, something like that, and then fix the edges. Now, if we don't fix the edges, we're gonna have a problem later on, so definitely make sure that you're kind of getting a rounded off area here. So rotate as needed, pull these vertices out as necessary, and all in all, just try to keep it somewhat level up at the top, because it doesn't have to go as far up on the top, and if you don't fix it as you're modeling it, you're gonna have problems later. Okay, and then essentially repeat those steps all the way to the end here. So now that our inside of the mouth is finished, what we want to do is kind of pull this off, make it its own object, and then work on the teeth. And this will just make it a lot easier because we can hide the head and place the teeth where we need them once we're at that point. So go ahead and select everything on the mouth bag. Just simply select a face and hit Control L. And since we hid the faces, it's not going to go any further than that. And then what we want to do is just hit P and separate by selection. And so now we can see we not only have the head, but now we have the head retopped 001, which will just be the inside of the mouth. Now at the end, we are going to join these objects back together, but like I said, this is just going to make it a lot easier because we can hide the head and simply see the mouth bag and the area that we're working on. And that kind of looks like a weird sock puppet, but there you go. So take a quick moment and make sure that you have the object that's the inside of the mouth here named specifically in the outliner so that you can find it later, and go ahead and select everything and hide everything. Then what we can do is right click on the separator bar and join the areas, and we get an arrow which allows us to pick which side we want. Just select one of the sides, it doesn't really matter. From there, what we're going to do is add in the torus that will become the teeth. So hit Shift A and then mesh and add in a torus. Now make sure you come over here and change the major segments over to 12 because we're going to end up deleting most of the torus anyway, and add some modifiers to make it a little bit faster for modeling. From there, hit Tab to go into edit mode, and it's time to actually model the teeth. So for this, what we want to do is delete everything on the backhand side. So we still have X-ray selected, and we're just going to delete all of those vertices. And then we're also going to delete everything on this side because what we'll add here are a couple of modifiers. So come over to the property panel, and we're going to add in 2 modifiers right off the bat. We're going to add in the mirror modifier so that it's mirroring across the x-axis. And then we want to add in the subdivision surface modifier, which will give us a much smoother feel, and we'll use that a little bit more when we start working with the teeth. So turn clipping on for the mirror modifier so that way our vertices don't pull away from the center, and then look at the teeth from the front. And also delete the bottom half of the teeth here. So what we should end up with is a half pipe that is just the top half of the torus and only in one quadrant. Once we've got that done, it's time to actually make the adjustments for the teeth. So grab the entire edge back here and extrude off along the y-axis. To right about there, that should be good. And then move that over on the x-axis to give that little widening feel that we'll have with our jaw so that it widens out towards the base. And then we're going to add in a loop cut here just to kind of hold the back shape, and another one to kind of even out those faces with the subdivision surface modifier. And then let's go ahead and fill in the bottom of the piece here. So grab the edge, hit E to extrude, X to lock it to the x-axis, and then snap it to the center. And we can do that all the way through. So let's turn off the subdivision surface modifier and take a look. At this point in your model, you should have this overall. Let's go ahead and we can move this, I guess, down just a little bit because that's a little higher than the rest of them. But yeah, there we go. So scale Z0. There we go. Now it's all the same height. Okay, so if you don't have this, go back and kind of continue working, but if you do, let's move on. We're going to add in a couple of extra loop cuts though because of our subdivision surface. I want to add in one going along the bottom over here and one going along the bottom over here. And then we can turn this subdivision surface modifier back on and see where we're at. Then just right click and shade smooth, and congratulations, you've got the beginnings of your gum. Now I'm also going to pull these 2 faces up a little bit just because our gums can come up really high, and we're going to scale these out just a little bit so that they get a little bit bigger. And they go back just a little bit. I mean, no one's really going to see this, so I'm not really worried about it. But what I am worried about is that there won't be enough space to sink our teeth into when it's all said and done. So speaking of teeth, it's time to start modeling those. So for our mouth, we essentially have 3 shapes of teeth. that are going on in here. We have the molars, which are just very, very square. I mean, obviously real molars have kind of like crowns at the top of each corner, but they're still very, very square. And then we have the incisors in the front of our mouth, which help us to bite down and rip off things. These are going to be square-ish towards the base, but then narrow out into very thin sections at the tips. And then we have the canines and the premolars. And the canine is very sharp, as we all know, but then the premolars are like a combination of the canine and the molar. So that's just the shape that we're going to be working with. So to make those shapes, we need a single cube, and then we'll work our way around the mouth. Alright, so we're going to start with the molar in the back of our mouth here, so hit Shift A and add in a cube. Now this cube is much bigger than it should be, but let's go ahead and then select this bottom face and go ahead and delete it. From there, we want to add in a loop cut going all the way around towards the bottom, and that's going to keep the squareness of our tooth overall. Then we can go ahead and select everything on the cube, and let's scale this way down and move this over on the x-axis. Now we're going to run into some problems because of clipping, so let's turn off clipping for the moment, move this up, and there we go. We have our molar. We can turn clipping back on, or we can leave it off, because as we work on the teeth, you don't want to accidentally bring two teeth together. So there we go. We have our cube. Let's put this in place. So we'll continue to scale it down, move this up, and then can kind of rotate this along the z-axis and position it back here somewhere for the molar. Now this tooth is way too rounded, so let's go ahead, right click and subdivide the tooth, which will give us a much nicer feel for a molar, and then move these down on the z-axis, and boom, there we go, molar. And then once again, we'll just kind of scale it down so that it fits where it needs to fit. And to get the other two molars, all we have to do now is hit Shift D, duplicate, and place. And there we go, we have our molars in our mouth. And if you want, obviously you can adjust them individually, but because no one really sees the molars, I'm gonna keep them roughly this same size here, and then we'll move them down just a little bit. So what I'll do is grab the gum and move it out so that even with the subdivision surface modifier on, it still comes through and encompasses the outside of the tooth, and then just make sure that the inside gum is also encompassing the outside of the tooth, and there we go. All right, so we've got our three molars. That's good enough for me. Now let's work on the premolars. So once again, hit Shift A, add in a new cube, delete the bottom, and then let's go ahead and scale this down, turn off clipping again if it's still on, and then we're going to shape out for ourselves the premolar. Now a premolar is kind of sharper towards the top, so let's go ahead and grab this one edge here, move this up, add in an extra edge loop, move this one down so that we're getting in some sharpness here, select it all, and subdivide in. There we go. And then we can scale this down and place this into the tooth. And there we go, we have a premolar. If we want, we can then also grab these and move this up a bit, so that way we've kind of got a nice little transition here between sharp and not sharp, and there we go. That's basically a premolar. Then just grab it all and duplicate it, and then place it where it needs to go. All right, now don't worry too much about the placing at this point in time. We still have to fill in the other teeth, and we don't want to get too, married to wherever the position is, but you get the idea. All right, so at this point, you've kind of seen the basics for making some pretty simple teeth. So go ahead and, you can follow along, but the rest of these are going to be time-lapse for making the canines and the incisors. So at this point, our bottom jaw is done and it has all of the teeth in there. And you can continue to play around with the teeth, but you kind of have to balance the fact that like no one's really gonna see these all that much, and you know, the detail level that you want in there. So I'm still gonna have to come in and place these two teeth right here a little bit differently and maybe move the molars forward and stuff. But for me, this is basically done. And so now to do the top jaw is super simple. So all we have to do is hit Shift D and duplicate this, hit Z to move it up on the Z axis, and then with the object selected, hit Scale, Z, and then -1. And there we go. And so now our teeth are completely flipped and they're good to go. So the model is done at this point as far as teeth are concerned. Obviously, you will need to position these and make the top teeth look a little different because the bottom teeth and your top teeth don't look exactly the same. The front teeth are a little bit wider than the bottom front teeth, and the canines are a little bit further out spaced, but there you go. Your top jaw and your bottom jaw are finished, and the final piece for this whole section is the tongue. So let's make the tongue real quick and this tutorial will be done. So for the tongue, let's go ahead and hide the top jaw here, and we want to add in a plane. Now for the tongue itself, we're gonna just use the bottom jaw as kind of the area that it needs to fill up. So let's add in a couple of modifiers real quick. The first one we wanna add in is the solidify modifier. This will give our tongue some thickness. So we can go ahead and increase the thickness there. I think that's probably good for the size of our tongue. And then we also want to add in a subdivision surface modifier. Now we can hit Tab, go into edit mode, and let's go ahead and shape our tongue. To do that, we want to add in a loop cut by hitting Control R and then adding another edge loop to the base of our tongue here. Let's go ahead and pull this on the Y axis till it fits behind the jaw there. And I think that's pretty good. And then we'll add in an extra loop cut right here, which we can then scale in, and then grab this edge and scale this down as well so that our tongue kind of comes to a point. And then we want to go ahead and grab all of these edges. So Control Alt select one of the edges, and we want to go ahead and subdivide that twice. So that way we get some additional vertices in there. Okay, and there we go. Our tongue is basically done. I mean, we could add in, let's go to the subdivision surface, increase the number of subdivisions. We could add in another loop cut here if we want, maybe scale this out so it's not such a sharp transition, but that's pretty much all you need to do for the tongue. I'll even make it have a little bit more of a point, but there we go. Our tongue is complete, and we can scale the whole thing down if we want. Go ahead and apply that scale, and then I'm going to move the point of origin back here to the middle vertex in the back. So just cursor to selected, go back to object mode, right click, and then set origin to 3D cursor, and there we go. All right, and we can do the same thing back here, just with the bottom and then the upper jaw, set origin to 3D cursor. And so now if we were to rotate this along the x-axis, and then, you know, we were to rig this, we could then also kind of rotate from the back where it's not really going to be seen. Now, to put all of this together, all we have to do is bring back in the inside of the mouth so we can make that visible again, and we can see that we have a lot of scaling down to do. So let's go ahead and bring in the top and bottom jaws, hit Alt R to remove any and all rotation, select all three of our objects here, and we want to go ahead and scale them down. And we're going to position them inside the little mouth pocket that we have here. So let's go ahead and move this down, and we can see we have a lot of scaling to do, but let's go ahead and scale down and then position. All right, and that's almost in place, but we can just kind of bring it up inside the mouth. Okay, and something like that is going to be acceptable. So let's go ahead and bring back in the head, and we can see that if we have the head, we can look inside and we see the mouth bag, which, you know, we should probably scale up just a little bit so that the teeth can fit in here and feel a little bit more natural, and then we'll have the jaw and stuff in place. So we're going to continue to play around with that placement, especially once we get into rigging, but the final step here will just be to connect these things again. So hit Alt-H to bring back everything that was hidden, and then what we want to do is select the inside of the mouth and the head retop together and hit Control-J so that it joins it into a single object again. So with everything selected, let's go ahead and hit Mesh, Clean Up, and Merge by Distance, which should remove 13 vertices because the inside of our mouth and the lip ring should now be connected together. All right, and then we could get in here and continue to play around with that, but you guys get the point. So if you've made it to this point in the tutorial, I hope you found it really helpful for modeling teeth and the inside of the mouth. And if you liked it, let me know by smashing that like button or letting me know in the comments down below. And if you want to see more tutorials, go ahead and subscribe and ring the bell so that you get notified when I produce a new tutorial weekly, or check out one of these videos over here, and it will take you to one of the video tutorials that I've already done. I'm Sir Pinkbeard, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.